Good evening also from my side. In the next couple of minutes I would like to present the findings of my master thesis. And just shortly about what I'm going to tell about is, I will just quickly introduce myself again, even though Timo already introduced himself. And afterwards I'm going to talk about the thesis process we had, our research method, as well as about what accelerator programs are in general, and what our findings were, where we developed a conceptual model. First of all, that's me. My name is Kübra. I'm born and raised in Karlsruhe, but in 2013 I moved to Mannheim in order to conduct my business studies there. And afterwards I had a gap year between my bachelor's and my master's degree, where I worked at Daimler in Sindelfingen as well as at Hugo Boss in Metzing. And in 2017 I then moved to Denmark in order to conduct my master's degree in Management of Innovation and Business Development at Copenhagen Business School. And I think it was at the end of last year when I decided to move back to Karlsruhe. That was a time when I also applied for a student position here at netzstrategen. And while I was working as a student assistant here, I was also writing on my thesis. And I'm talking about our thesis because at Copenhagen Business School there is this regulation where theses are written like by a group of two. So my thesis partner, whom I also asked to join us tonight, preferred to stay in Mexico at the beach, so I'm sorry about that. Exactly. So in January we started to write our thesis and also began to look into what is interesting to write about. And then we found the accelerator topic quite interesting. So we started looking into the literature of accelerators. And we quickly noticed that the accelerator literature is actually quite limited to conceptual descriptions. So we wanted to do a bit more, which I will explain in a bit. Afterwards, we started conducting some interviews here in this region with startups as well as with the accelerators. And there we interviewed around 10 startups, sometimes with a group of 2, and also the accelerators they were part of. In May we finally submitted our thesis, and last month around this time we defended successfully and graduated from Copenhagen Business School. So what was the purpose of our thesis, or about the topic in general? Well, as I already said, we noticed that the accelerator literature was, there was a lag in the literature. So it was always like conceptual descriptions, which I'm also going to talk about, but we wanted to go a bit beyond and actually look into the services that accelerators provide to the startups from which they can benefit. So we formulated our research question, which was, how do startups benefit from the services provided by accelerators? And in order to answer this research question, we then went out and talked to a lot of startups, also for quite a long time, and sometimes several times, because we just wanted to go deeper into what the benefits actually were for them. Because you have to imagine, all the accelerators tell you it's so wonderful, we offer you so much, but how do the startups actually think about that? So our goal was to understand from the point of view of the startups in how far specific services actually provided them a specific advantage. So, accelerator programs. Does anyone actually know what they are, or what they do, what they offer? Yeah?
So it's mainly a network which takes in startups to further develop and speed up their development process. Mm-hmm. It sometimes is linked to an investment, but doesn't have to be. Yeah. And they provide them with sales, marketing, whatever, knowledge, business development, like business canvas stuff.
Yeah, perfect, exactly. It's all that, And you have to imagine startups that just start with a specific idea, they lack a lot of resources, as you already said. For example, a network. They need a network to potential clients, potential stakeholders for their idea, for example. But they also lack credibility, like no one knows about you, no one thinks about your idea in a specific way, for example. So, exactly. So, the first accelerator was then launched by the Silicon Valley-based Y Combinator in order to support these startups which don't have enough resources, for example, who are faced with a high risk of failure. Because you have to imagine, the first years of a startup are the riskiest ones. And research indicates that the failure rate of startups in the first years are more than 90%. So it's quite a number, and that's why this first seed accelerator was launched. By now, recent estimations actually reach from 300 to 2,000 accelerators worldwide. So even in this area, there are quite a lot of accelerators we found out. Here you see what actually accelerators, or how you can distinguish them between incubators and angel investors. Most of the time, incubators are, or accelerators are thought to be incubators. But what distinguishes them are mainly just 3 points. It is the duration, the cohort-based program, as well as the mentorship. So you have to think about incubators. When you enter an incubation program, it can last until like for 5 years, even longer. But accelerators, as you already actually said, it is to speed up the process. It is to make the startup ready as soon as possible in order to enter the market, in order to generate or transform the business idea into a business model. And also the cohort-based program. Does anyone know what a cohort is? So startups, they enter as a group into the accelerator program. So there's a specific date when an accelerator starts, and they end the accelerator program as a group. So most of the time it's, for example, 10 startups entering an accelerator program. And also the focus on mentorship is quite high in these programs. So based on this distinctions, Cohen and Holberg, 2014, they formulated this this definition of accelerators. It is a fixed-term, cohort-based program, including mentorship and educational components that culminates in a public pitch event or demo day. And if we have some more time later on, I will just quickly also show you like an example of a public pitch event, which was also from one of the accelerators we talked to. So, this was all about our thesis. So these are our findings. Oh, now you can see them. These were our findings. So after having conducted a lot of interviews, we saw that there was a pattern. So we formulated first what kind of services were offered by these accelerators. So we found out most of the time it's an infrastructure the accelerators offer to the startups, as well as counseling services, mentorship, educational components, and also additional services such as public pitch events, for example. And I just would like to focus on the infrastructure as well as on the counseling services. So the infrastructure, which is offered by most of the accelerators, refers to the office spaces, for example. So when a startup enters an accelerator program, most of the time they get an office space where they can work, where they can meet in their group, and where they kind of have a base to build upon. So most of the time the startups told us it offers us a structured way of working, because it is better than working from home when you just meet in your living room and then you kind of start working after eating, after playing that video game, and it's kind of when you enter the office, you start working on the idea. So that was one of the main benefits they told us what accelerators offer them. And also, most of them said, when we talk or when we tell people we are in an accelerator program or we are sitting at an accelerator office space, they kind of have some like credibility and professional appearance. So it is better to tell your client or your potential client that you're in an accelerator program where your idea was kind of already validated by like professionals, rather than sitting at home and telling them, hey, you can send this to my address, for example. And what was also quite interesting were the shared facilities. So most of the accelerators, they kind of offer shared facilities as well. Meaning, for example, a shared kitchen or shared meeting rooms and workshop rooms, where the startups or the entrepreneurs which are part of the cohort actually meet in a more natural setting. So they just go to the kitchen, for example, to make a coffee. One of the other entrepreneurs enters the room and then they kind of talk about, okay, we had this problem with our idea. Or, you know, do you have any idea how we can found our company? Like, should it be a GmbH or something else? So it's kind of, they talk to each other, they exchange information, they exchange knowledge. It is this peer exchange which makes it even more valuable to them. And also, most of the entrepreneurs that just start founding a company, they most of the time face similar challenges. As for example, the founding, or how should the company culture be, or some other legal stuff, for example. So this gives them like an infrastructure and an environment where information can be exchanged. And also the counseling services were mentioned quite often. And counseling services, they refer to, for example, regular meetings with team members of the accelerator. And most of the time, people say that they had like regular meetings. So they were meeting with the team members of the accelerator once a week in order to talk about their milestones, if they have reached them or not, in order to ask them for advice and to get some professional as well as some emotional support. Because when you talk to someone who knows more than you, you feel safe. You feel like, okay, that's right. Maybe it doesn't work today, but tomorrow we are gonna make it. So this kind of counseling was quite valuable to them as well. And also the identification of business opportunities was mentioned quite often. Most of the accelerators, they already have a network of people around them. So they know a lot of people they can introduce you to. If you need someone from the food industry, they can make you introduce you, or they can introduce you to them, for example. So those were like 2 of the 5 main services from which startups benefited highly. But I would want you to look into the inner cycle as well. So not all startups we interviewed were happy with the services that were offered by the accelerators. Like, actually there were a lot of critique as well. And most of the time we found that, for example, startups that are in a more intermediate or late stage, meaning that they already have a business model, they sometimes even have customers, like not paying but project-based customers, so yeah, you can tell that. So they were saying, okay, you know, I mean, it's nice to have all these services, but we already have our business model. So why should we even go and have the educational services as well? Why should we work on our business idea when it already works out there? Why should we look into it again? And also we noticed that startups who have founders with them with some accelerator or previous accelerator experience, with previous startup experience, and as well as, for example, they already conducted the business studies at a university, they are also not impressed by the accelerators. They also say, okay, it's nice to have them, it's nice to have a support network, it's nice to get introduced to some of the people, but you know, I think we could even done that by ourselves. I mean, yeah. And then the outer points, the quality, goal, maturity, as well as the availability, those are accelerator related factors. Meaning that sometimes the quality of some of the services are not as expected by the startup. So they were criticizing the services by these accelerators a lot. And also the availability. We conducted one interview where the startup said, you know, they were talking about this mentorship. We never had any mentoring. So it's kind of sad, but it's one of the factors that also tell you if they could benefit from it or not. And also maturity plays a huge role. So, well, there was one accelerator that already had experience about more than 10 years. Of course, they already got a lot of feedback from the startups that participated in this program. So they were kind of really good, and they got a lot of good feedback as well. But there were also accelerators that just started 2 years ago, and where there was no improvement at all. They were still at the same stage, and startups were actually criticizing quite a lot. So those are the 4 accelerator-related factors and the startup-related factors that play a huge role in how startups actually benefit from the services that are offered by accelerators. And I'm perfectly in time. So if you still have any questions, please just ask them.
As I don't know the concept, I knew business angels, but I didn't know accelerators. What's in it for them? I mean, do you pay a fee and then you go there, or is it just that you're getting a share of the...
Exactly.
Okay.
Most of the accelerators, they take a specific equity share.
Yeah.
It's about 3 to 5% most of the times, but not all of them. It depends on the goal of the accelerator. For example, there are also public accelerators which don't take any share, but they get, for example, payment from the government. So I don't know if you know Startup BW, for example. They pay quite a lot of money to Cyberforum, which is here in Karlsruhe, for example. They don't take any equity share, but they get fundings from the government in order to boost this region, in order to start to actually get some entrepreneurs in this area to develop ideas, for example. So that's more the economic factor then.
And how do you get an accelerator to like your idea? I mean, is there a pitch and then you say, well, I have this idea, and they say, yes, we will fund you and you'll come to our rooms and...
It also depends on the accelerator, but for example, Cyberforum, there is like a 4 weeks cyber lab, it is called, where you just send in your idea, and then you go into this cyber lab when they like your idea, and they start to develop your idea with you. If they see potential in your idea, they will take you into the program, but it is highly competitive, so they get a lot of actually applicants, but not all of the ideas are selected. So it also depends on, okay, do they see any potential in your idea? And if you nowadays come with AI or machine learning, they will take you anyway, so. No, that was not it. No.
Maybe less a question than just 2 additional things from last year's Y Combinator. First is, you didn't really mention that there's also a lot of war for talents, and an accelerator provides usually a very good network to universities to hire experts in the specific fields. So Y Combinator does that a lot.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, like you talked about, they apply as a group, but they are really a close community. So what happened Y Combinator last year was, like on pitch day, you have to present and you have to answer questions like how many versions of your software have you shipped already, how many users do you have, and 2 days before pitch day, everyone is like, oh, 100 euros or so, and then in a circle they buy the software. Each startup buys 1,000 chips or 1,000 versions of the other startup, so they grow to 100,000 users just before it. So it's kind of little tricks inside the community to raise value.
Yeah,
just
I can imagine.
Yeah,
but that's good. Thank you.
You said you conducted interviews for startups. Do you exclusively take regional startups from Karlsruhe, or
as well?
Which one is yours?
We had Karlsruhe ones, but also in the area Mannheim, Frankfurt, and Heidelberg. So it was around. It was in Baden-Württemberg.
Okay.
Besides.
Was there a quality difference between the accelerators?
Yes.
Let's talk about
I'm unfortunately not allowed to tell more, but they were quite different. But also because you see that these 4 factors, which were accelerator related, they had a huge impact on how the services gave any impact or made any impact in the startups. And maturity plays a huge role. Like one of the accelerators, as I already said, they just started in 2017, which will give you maybe a hint. But so they were not really ready yet, or maybe, I mean, they're improving. But of course, an accelerator that does that for 10 years or more is going to have a better impact on that.
Did you feeling that accelerator programs are today something like front ends for the business angel to approve if the entrepreneur has the social abilities and the look or something to get the idea to success? And yeah, there make some things that make no sense for some companies. So.
Yeah, definitely. Our research also showed that when you have a stamp of an accelerator, for example, if you pitch your idea, you have more credibility out there when you want to talk to investors. So it is kind of, but then it depends again on the accelerator. When no one ever heard about the accelerator, I'm not sure if they will get the credibility they wish for. So again, it depends on the accelerator related factors.
Is there a study? I mean, you said about 90% of startups fail. Is there a study which is with an accelerator the rate is lesser?
Yeah, there are quite a lot of studies about that actually. They also look into, I mean, then again, you have to define success. When you enter an accelerator program, which gives you an equity stake, for example, and where you get investment after you pitch your idea, then it is like considered to be a success, for example. Exactly, but that's not what everyone thinks about success. But then again, what about the public accelerators that don't take any equity stake? They would not tell you that success is when the startups get any investment. They would say it is the labor created in the area, it is the workspaces which are created out of the startups in the future. So it always depends how you define the success, and most...
5 years still in business and doing money.
Yeah, you can't say that, no, not really, yeah.
So you said there are a lot of differences in the quality or the reputation of accelerators. How do I identify a bad one? There should go to. What are indicators for that?
That's a good question. I think I would look into the participants that were already part of it and look into what they think. So you can just ask them. You can just ask them what their opinion was about it. Because when we asked like 5 startups, 4, which were not part of the accelerator anymore, they were quite open about what didn't go well. Of course, those are just subjective opinions. You can tell if that's true or if it's just, you know, their feeling because they could not get the investment, for example. But you kind of get the feeling of it, and Also, when you look into, for the public accelerators, it's the funding from the state, for example. One of the accelerators, they don't get any funding anymore from this year on. So you know, okay, something went wrong there, so maybe you should not apply for that one.
So the accelerator don't play the game. The money givers get in mind, or?
Yeah. Okay, I think we will.
If you have more questions, feel free to ask.